I'd like to welcome all of you today to the first session for our professional development series this year. And today we're focusing on building relationships together and the ABCs of healthy relationships between providers and licensors. Also, I'd just like to put a little caveat in there that this can also apply to other aspects of other relationships in your life. A lot of great information in this session today. We are going to cover a couple of topics, and those topics are how appreciation and respect, how appreciation and respect plays a healthy role in the relationship between licensors and providers, and that is a reciprocal relationship. We're going to talk a little bit about how perceived authority can affect those relationships. And then we're going to acknowledge and talk a little bit about the stressors on both sides of that relationship, the stressors for licensors and also the stressors for providers. I'm very pleased that we have two really great speakers with us today, and they're going to introduce themselves in just a little bit. We are recording this, and after it goes through the remediation process, we will post it on the website, and then also you will be receiving a certificate as follow-up for attendance in this session today. It usually takes us a couple of days to work all that out and get it to you all, but we are planning to do that. If you need closed captioning today, you can go to your More button in your Zoom link and you can adjust what you need. If you have any problems with that, just drop it in the chat box and we will help you with that. Next slide, Shannon. A little bit about our a little bit about the National Center on Early Childhood Quality Assurance. We really focus on three different aspects. One is standards and licensing regulations. When we think about standards and licensing regulations, though, it goes way beyond that. It goes to include everything in the licensing arena that touches standards, regulations, relationships, administration, policy, quality assurance. We also focus a lot on quality initiatives, which is really thinking about how to use licensing as a foundation, but also embed QRS standards or accreditation, those types of components into licensing administration. And then we also think about quality assurance systems, the things that we can help you think through or promote to help you continually improve your licensing administration. And that would be things like technology needs, data analysis, informal, formal quality assurance strategies to help you in your daily jobs. We're really excited that we have also incorporated PD, especially for licensors in our work plan. We recognize that there's not a lot of like really specific PD for licensing administration and staff. So we've developed these with content that we think will be helpful for you all to take in your daily work to continually improve. What we're going to do today, next slide, Shannon. What we're going to do today is we're going to hear content again from our two highly esteemed partners, and they're going to introduce themselves in just a minute. We're going to have one poll at the beginning, just a quick poll for you to fill in, and Mary Beth will talk about that. And then there'll be a quick poll at the end so that we can gauge whether or not this content is useful to you. But to do introductions first, my name is Christy Lewis, and I do work with the Quality Center. I've been with the Quality Center about 5 years, but prior to that, I spent 20 years in childcare licensing in the state of Georgia. So licensing and license exempt and all that it encompasses is my passion and always has been. Next, I'm going to pass it to Amy.
Hi, welcome everyone. We're glad to see such a big group. My name is Amy Page. I'm an early childhood quality assurance consultant, also at the National Center on Early Childhood Quality Assurance. And we're really grateful to have all of you attending today and have Nikki and Mary Beth and Camille as our special guest presenters. And I'm going to pass it along to Shannon to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheena Smith. I am a technical assistant specialist here at the Quality Center, and I am calling in from Louisiana. Thank you for joining us. And I will pass it to Mary Beth.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Beth Testa, and I'm a consultant and an advocate, and I love childcare licensing. And National Center team, thank you so much for asking me to be here today. And to the 857 people who have signed in today, wow, and thanks. I can't wait to spend some time with you. And also, what an honor to get to be here with Nikki and Camille, who are doing such awesome work. And I can't wait for you to hear from them too. Nikki, over to you.
Mary Beth, you're so kind. Hello, everyone. I'm Nikki Gill Adams. I'm the Executive Director at IRE, the Institute for Racial Equity and Excellence. Likewise, it's so good to be here. I believe our participants list is up to 867. So we are here in Denver, Colorado, and it's morning time. I see some people saying it's afternoon where they are at. It's morning here, so good morning and welcome. So honored to be here. Thank you. I'll pass it to Camille.
Good morning, everybody from Denver, Colorado. My name is Camille Espinoza, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Institute of Racial Equity and Excellence, also known as IRE. I am excited to be presenting with Nikki today or sharing my personal experience in the licensing role. And I look forward to your presentations today.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And ditto to you, Mary Beth. It's just so amazing to have 865 or so participants on the call today. And we do thank you for taking the time out of your busy day, because in licensing, you're always working really hard, and just taking the time out sometimes can be a stretch in your daily schedule. So thank you for joining us. At this time, we're going to move into the presentation. Mary Beth is going to go first. And as we go through the call today, just one little housekeeping item. There are a lot of people on the call today. If you have questions, again, or thoughts, just drop them in the chat box. We're going to try to keep a record of all of that and answer those that we can. And if there's something that comes up that we don't get to, we will make every effort to address it in the follow-up. You will get a follow-up email after this call with all the resources and research and all of that. So just use the chat box. And Mary Beth, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Again, everyone, my name is Mary Beth Testa, and I'm a consultant and an advocate and a mother and a runner and a baseball fan, and I love talking about childcare licensing. I get to do some work at the national or federal level and in some states too. My work in the childcare field, my place in this work is helping to connect policy and real life. Decisions are being made at all levels every single day, and the people who have to live with those decisions must be a part of that process and not just like a checkbox, right? And that's you too, the people on this call. You're carrying out decisions and you're making a lot of your own too. I want licensing to make sense. I want it to be valued as part of our system. I want licensing inspector jobs to be great jobs with great pay, a job you can stay in, and a job somebody new would be really excited to get. I want our state and federal budgets to invest in childcare in robust and lasting ways that includes investing in you. I've worked with providers and licensing folks across many states. The content and the process and the approach and the enforcement and the impact. Licensing and licensing staff are under-resourced and working within this huge scarcity model, and that certainly creates an element of fatigue. So how can we support each other? This session is about building positive and effective relationships with providers, and to me that means we do it together. So let's dive in. Shannon, next slide, and the poll, if you would. I'd love to hear who is here based on what your day job is, and answer whatever is best for you. I inspect child care centers. I inspect family child care homes. I inspect both centers and family child care homes, or you're here today and not an inspector, but you support and engage in other ways. Unexpectedly, although I don't know why I'm surprised, as you were signing in, a lot of our provider friends are here too. I'm sorry that's not a choice for you, but go ahead and say that you support and engage in other ways, because you sure do. Hi, friends. I can't tell whether people are responding, so I'm going
They
to.
are.
Yes, okay.
They are. We'll give it a couple more seconds. We are, because it's still coming in.
Sure, great. There's a lot of people here. You guys, thank
There
you.
is.
For real, thank you. Yeah, right. It's not always that tidy, right? We're going to talk about that too.
All right, so it looks like our responses are slowing down. Just right now say that the number keeps jumping. All right. Another 8 seconds or so, and then I'm gonna close the poll.
Okay.
All right, we have an 88% response rate.
Way to go.
So you should be able to see it on your screen right now, and it looks like 56% of the participants today inspect both the centers and family child care homes, and that is followed by our child care friends, who may not be an inspector, but they engage in other ways with 18%.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I wish I could see you and hug you. I can include that in my introduction too. I really like hugs. All right. So next slide. Thanks for that, everybody. One of the things that I want to make sure I start with, and that you all feel at least for the next hour and beyond, is that you're important. Your work is important, your role is important, and you matter. Licensing inspectors, we see you and we acknowledge you and all that you carry. I'm an advocate, and I really like talking about feelings. We feel, and we should feel. This work is very personal. And what if that was just awesome and okay that it was personal and we could feel? I also feel that belonging matters, and a feeling of belonging looks different to everyone, and we can find out what that is about each other. I carry this with me in all of my work, and it is driving me today in this session. You belong, and so do the people working in the programs you inspect. Right about now, some of you are wondering whether Mary Beth Testa is going to talk about feelings this entire session. Maybe. Next slide, please. So you're the inspector. Whatever your job title is, you have a variety of roles: educator, consultant, trainer, facilitator, communicator, enforcer. I encourage you to reflect on how these roles show up for you. It might be different every day. It might be different every inspection. They might swirl for you in any given interaction. You're being asked to be in a relationship, but not friends. You're being asked to consider mutual respect. We all are. And then think about, what role does authority play in your interactions? How does that change things? How are we delivering on that? How is it being perceived, whether you intend it to be felt that way or not? Both sides of that are important. Your role is critically important, and maybe in some ways that not enough people talk about enough. I believe you carry the weight of what is safe and not safe. And I feel that you feel that you should know all the things, but that's impossible. It's impossible for anyone. It's a part of what you do. You're a connector, a visitor, a partner, a peer, in that you're both professionals in early care and education, experts in your craft, and toward the same goal of families having childcare that meets their needs. What if we were peers in the work with the providers that we inspect? And what if the providers felt that way about you too as you arrived? Next slide, please. I want to talk about sharing power. Inspection team, you aren't the only ones who know things. The providers know a lot too. Sharing power doesn't mean you aren't still an inspector. It doesn't mean letting things slide. It does start with seeing that we're on the same team and equal, that no one in this relationship is better or more important than the other. And so if we're the same amount of important as each other, we can give each other respect, and we can give each other clear information and shared knowledge. And I think this is a huge piece of a good relationship. So while we sit with that for a second, I will ask Shannon to go to the next slide. The state of childcare in this country is a mess. Next slide, please. We're going to send this out. We're also going to send out links that back up these points, and if you want a little more reading on any of these data points here, we'll send that out in the follow-up email. In December 2022, researchers shared that nationally, 81% of center-based and 73% of family child care providers report stress, anxiety, depression as a result of staff shortages in child care work, feelings they know are impacting their abilities to provide high-quality care. Researchers found that 1 in 3 in the early childhood workforce is worried about having enough to eat at the end of the month. Childcare availability has not returned to pre-pandemic levels. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that we have 100,000 fewer providers than we did before the pandemic. Not that things were going perfectly before that. We also didn't have enough childcare before. Parents, especially women, dropped out of the labor market and are struggling to return without childcare. I'm curious how many people are on this call right now, are at work today because of a child care provider they can count on for their own family. Go ahead and share that in the chat box if that's you. Lots of us are seeing this firsthand, worried about people that we know who are looking for and can't find child care at all, let alone what they can afford. And this might be lots of us here today. I'm seeing lots in the chat box. Child poverty dropped by half from 1993 to 2019. This is a big deal in the right direction, but child poverty is still present, still persistent, and importantly, material hardship among families has been on the rise since spring of 2022. Researchers with the Rapid EC project report that having a higher household income does not fully protect families from material hardship either. They found that 2 out of 3 low-income families with young children indicate they face material hardship. Meanwhile, 39% of middle-income families experience material hardship and 17% of higher-income families. So that tells us that household income does not fully represent a family's experience with financial difficulties. Black and Hispanic families have consistently reported significantly higher rates of material hardship than white households, too. These are American facts and not limited to the childcare workforce. This, again, could be someone we know, someone we worry about. This could be us. This hardship is associated with increases in parent distress and what the rapid EC researchers call a chain reaction to child emotional distress. Stabilization grants approved by Congress in early 2021 made a huge difference to the child care workforce. These investments rolled out differently in different states. Everyone on this call had a different experience than the next person with this rollout, and some had timelines, meaning it's already over. I offer two things to consider about these important grants. One, it is not reasonable to expect those funds to last. They arrived in a moment of mounting debt for childcare programs and personally for the childcare workforce. They may have ended in your state in a moment of intensity of gas prices and grocery prices, while competition for wages pulled more and more people away from this work. The second thing I want us to keep in mind about these grants is that providers share that they're still here because of those grants, but for how much longer? The number one thing they'd need in order to stay: competitive wages. I'm sharing all of this for a reason, and here it is. She has a whole pile of worries on her shoulders when someone knocks on the door. You might have a whole pile of worries on your shoulders as you arrive. What if we recognized that that might be true and proceed to handle one another with care? Next slide, please, Shannon. Let's talk about home. The Coalition on Human Needs shares in 2022, landlords filed almost 970,000 evictions in 10 states and 37 cities, monitored by what's called the Eviction Lab at Princeton University. That's a 78.6% increase over 2021. Evictions did drop during the pandemic due to a combination of the CDC telling us don't evict people and an increased rental and other aid. But in 2022, after that eviction moratorium had been lifted and the aid had largely run dry, the evictions rose back up. Those are people kicked out of the place that they lived. Researchers report high levels of concern about housing affordability, eviction, and foreclosure among the childcare workforce. 42% of providers they found across all setting types reported being somewhat or very worried about not being able to pay their rent or mortgage in full. 38% of providers who rent report concern about eviction, and 22% of those who own their home reported concern about foreclosure. For home-based providers who earn a living caring for children in their home, this should be very concerning to us. They need a home they can afford, a home where they're allowed to be a family child care provider. 28% of family child care providers are somewhat or very worried about being evicted from their home. And you just knocked on the door. So again, this housing crisis is experienced by the workforce in centers, the family child care workforce, and may indeed be experienced by a family you know, someone you're worried about, or this might be us. You show up every day in the face of this. I want to speak for a moment, especially those who inspect family child care. I just think it's not the same as being inspected in a center. In a center, indeed, she's putting her life's work out for you to be judged. Her commitment, her training, her education, her practice, all on display for consideration. But she doesn't live there. She doesn't sleep there. She didn't raise her family there. For a family child care provider, in addition to putting her commitment, her training, her education, her practice all on display for consideration, you're walking into her home. This takes personal to a whole new level. These are her decorations, her furniture choices, where she ate Sunday breakfast with her family, where her own children maybe took their first steps. Having said that, family child care providers also tell me we're in our home, but we need to be respected as professionals. I I think we can balance and achieve both things, respecting her home and respecting her professionalism. Again, she has a whole pile of worries on her shoulders when the inspector arrives, whether it's a center or family child care. You might have a whole pile of worries on your shoulders too. Next slide, please, Shannon. The state of childcare in this country is a mess. It is not on you to solve all of that, but you and your role, you are crucial. And I think that this comes together in our efforts to really see each other, see the people behind the numbers, see the person living out your checklist. Hi, Brianne. Seeing each other, seeing her and the whole person and the whole context. And what would it be like for you to be seen too, right? And have the whole of you and your context seen. The basic foundation of a relationship is respect, mutual respect as professionals and crucial individuals. A relationship, but not friends. A relationship, but not only about what's wrong, a relationship also about what's right. Your role is not only about what is wrong. Your role as an inspector in the child care field is about what is good and needs to be better too. Next slide, please. So what I like to do wherever we can is focus on strengths. And importantly, a lot of people are saying no in the chat box. Is everything okay? We can hear me generally? Okay. What I like to do is focus on strengths and importantly, identify those things that are in our control or that we can do something about, and those things that are out of our control. And even then, even if you can't solve a problem, you knowing about the problem and educating someone else at your agency about it can be really influential. So I want to share some examples of what we hear in the provider community and around the licensing inspector community, and what you in your role today can and can't do anything about. I feel this is all really a part of seeing each other. You are part of the system, and even that doesn't just mean one thing. While we're building support for this part of the work, even that's not just one thing. We're thinking about regulations, content, and licensing enforcement and inspections and monitoring and the staff, you guys, and the interactions. We're thinking about how that gets paid for and how much and who can do this and who can afford to stay. It's all connected. Providers are seeing and knowing and experiencing systemic inequities, including racism and discrimination. Funding is inequitable across settings. The costs they outlay and the payments they receive don't work out. They have administrative burdens, and they're experiencing a variety of material hardships. And many of you have these worries in your own life about yourself or someone you care about. You, the licensing inspector, can't change funding inequities in your current role. The funding inequity wasn't your choice, wasn't your call. But as an aside, seeing it and knowing it's true makes you a ready advocate. But that's another meeting. In today's meeting, we're going to stay here and talk about how it's the content, the rules, policy, regulations likely evolved over time, may or may not be clear to read, may or may not be available in languages other than English, may or may not have a lot of gray area subject to interpretation and confusion and different people seeing it different ways. That's a problem. The regulations might not honor the home setting, even if they're meant to be applied in family child care. You may or may not be in a position to rewrite regulation, but you're certainly in a spot where you can see where something breaks down if it's breaking down. What would it take to smooth out points when something isn't clear? It's also in the approach, how we deliver, how we ask, how we see each other. And some of this is system level, and we should talk about this as whole agencies or divisions. It is not on just one of us to solve. We couldn't, because it would take it, because it's about teamwork, right? For instance, the provider community tells us that there should be continuity of the standards, not depending on interpretation of the licensing representative. That we should have consistency. If it says it on the website, it should be the same in the documents. It should be the same verbally. The licensor and the provider should be able to have the same information, whether they downloaded it from a website or you handed it to them. We should be able to communicate in different languages. We should be able to communicate in the language most confident for the provider. Regulations and enforcement should account for the unique strengths and characteristics of the setting. We should be adjusting licensors' caseloads so you have time to bring all of this meaning and all of these relationships that we're talking about. We should align systems so that providers don't have to jump through different hoops for different agencies or different people within an agency. You might be the only person who visits a center or family child care home, but more likely you're one of many throughout a month or a year. And another thing we hear is a call for staff training to licensors so that you all are familiar and confident in your job and your role, and not just in the onboarding moment, not just on the first day or the first month. That it might be great to have ongoing staff development, including cultural sensitivity and humility. These are all things that take more than you or your choice, and take more than a provider saying it would be a good idea. They have said that. Those are work together and build it things. You can be a part of that. But on the road to that, there are things you can do every day to connect meaningfully. And many of you are already doing all of these things in your approach, your delivery, your role as an educator, consultant, trainer, facilitator, communicator, enforcer. You are and you can arrive prepared for that inspection. When it's done, you can do your paperwork somewhere else, not at the early childhood program. You can arrive with a smile. You can arrive as a peer in the work, peers and equals with the same goal. Arrive ready to share power, knowing we all want the same thing, for families to have care that meets their needs and children to have a great day. You can be a source of accurate information and a listener. You can make sure she doesn't have to do the same thing over and over. You can respect her time. You can help her on why about all the paperwork, maybe. When you find yourself with an opportunity to ask internally, why do we do it this way? Please do ask it. Someone somewhere decided the paperwork was necessary. Why? Is it still necessary? Is it making a true difference in the quest to ensure families have access to safe, nurturing childcare that meets their needs? Or is it a blocker and we're losing people over it? Just something to think about. And this is hard. Your job is hard, licensing inspectors. Next slide, please. We hear in the licensing staff community that there is a need and a desire for dedicated time, resources, and support for licensing staff professional development. My goodness, 1,100 of you registered for this call, and the desire from staff to connect with and learn from peers in this work. I wanted to share an example of something we've tried. We call it inspection reflection. We invented this in 2 counties in one state that I work with, where these 2 inspectors are each part of a larger child care team of not inspectors. And since they go to the family child care homes, they have a firsthand take on the needs and experiences. So how can we all learn from that in a way that doesn't make a ton more work for the inspectors, but really tries to open up what they're doing anyway? And they told me once it's their favorite meeting and their favorite way to gather. We open each meeting with 3 questions. How are you? How are we? How are they? And then they take it from there and it goes somewhere differently every time. You guys, I have no special training in this, but I have an hour a month to give. And so do these 2 people who I think are actually on right now. And I will email you after this session to set up our next time together. I think this is also, this kind of reflective work is also about earning trust among each other. How do we make room? How do we make space for each other and what we're carrying, what you're carrying? Maybe that starts with those of us who came today. If this idea of reflecting and trusting together is resonating with you, maybe share it in the chat box. You can say yes, you can say maybe, you can say no. You can share that you're wondering if you'd be allowed to host or ask for a gathering like this in your department. And some of you maybe are not excited about sharing your feelings, and that's okay too, not for everybody, but reflecting and having someone who understands you, knows the job like you know the job. Reflecting together, I think, can be a very powerful tool for managing our worries and getting our job done too. Next slide, please. I hope you will continue to reflect a little on your roles and how your roles show up for you and what it would be like to be seen in your work and be able to see the real life swirling around people working in the programs that you inspect. You are important. I'm so excited to hand it over to Nikki Gill Adams now, who's going to talk about the powerfully cool work they're doing in Colorado. Nikki, over to you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Hello, everyone. Camille and I come to you from the Institute for Racial Equity and Excellence, where we are a contractor of the state. We are a licensing unit that does an approach a little differently, and we consider ourselves community-based licensing team that is culturally responsive. Mary Beth, you shared some statistics and data that makes this topic so much more timely and powerful in talking about building relationships together. Camille, you'll hear from her a little later to talk about the practicality of building relationships between a licensing specialist and a provider and how our approach has impacted her relationships with providers. Our approach was founded by Dr. Rosemary Allen about 6 years ago. And like I mentioned, we are a contractor of the state of Colorado, and we oversee 3 major counties. And she dreamed of an approach that was responsive to the communities that we served. So thinking about what makes those communities unique, what makes them who they are. And then how do we use our approach as a licensing specialist to say that we value you as a unique individual in this space of licensing. We value you and your community. We value the work that you do. And so with culturally responsive community-based licensing, it focuses on 4 C's. That's competence, care, compassion, while ensuring compliance. I expect my licensing team to know the rules and regulations. And if they don't know an answer, how can you find that rule and regulation? I expect the licensing team to leave providers' hearts whole. We know that when we show up as a licensing inspector, we're working with directors, we're working with owners, we're working with teachers, we're working with family child care home providers. We know that we have an opportunity to either break or keep their heart whole because it impacts the work that they do with children. If we leave that provider crying in tears and stressed, what happens when we leave and they begin to work with children? They work with children in a way that's out of character. They're stressed. They may say things that they don't typically say. They may do things that they don't typically do. So how can we inspect and keep hearts whole in a compassionate way? How can we show concern? Perhaps it just wasn't a good inspection day. But how can we empathize and sympathize with our providers and say, we see you? Like Mary Beth shared, this work is hard. But how can we breathe innovation? How can we breathe hope while ensuring licensing compliance? And we do that in a way that promises that we'll use culturally responsive practices. We see our relationship with our providers as a mutual relationship that is reciprocal, built on information sharing and respect. We hope that as we build relationship, we hope that our providers feel value in the relationship that we're creating. And then in the same way, we're creating value with our providers. But genuinely asking questions, what makes your program unique? What are your goals for your program? Including all staff members in your inspections or even residents. In our family child care homes, our providers, they work and live. They live where they work. And sometimes their children are there, their spouses and partners are there. They may have a tenant that lives there, including them in that inspection. They're a part of helping that provider maintain compliance. So asking them, do you have questions? Introducing yourself. Hey, I'm so-and-so and I'm here for, would you happen to have any questions in helping so-and-so maintain compliance? That says, I see you and I recognize you. Teachers, oftentimes we communicate solely with the director or the owner, the leadership of a child care center program or a school age program. But our teachers, they're the ones implementing and keeping rules and regulations and compliance. And so asking them, do you have questions? Introduce yourself, I'm here. I always say, hand out your business card to the teacher. They may not have questions during the inspection, but if they have a question, open the lines of communication so that they can maybe ask you outside of business hours. They can email you, call you. Including staff members and residents forces us to slow down and include them in the process. And all of this is accomplished by really what I described as building authentic relationships, creating connections with providers. And at IRE, what I believe makes us unique is that we recognize issues of power, privilege, and authority. And we start with ourselves, understanding our biases, understanding that self-talk that happens in our head, understanding our assumptions, and then understanding our communities helps us build strong relationships with our providers. It makes us relatable in enforcing rules and regulations when we understand what's impacting our providers. And so at the core of our relationship, I mentioned that our inspections and how we build relationships with providers is built on respect. And I'm going to talk about the cycles of contempt and then moving towards respect. The relationship with a provider, it starts with the relationship that we have with ourselves. Relationships start with communication that occurs between your own mind. It's the basis of how we feel, our biases, our prejudices, and beliefs. So what questions are you asking yourself? What silent talks do you have? What are you verbalizing to yourself? If you're anything like me, you have some of the best and worst conversations with yourself. And it's really important for us to understand what comes up for us when we're talking to ourselves, because it leads to assumptions. And our assumptions can be a curse to the relationships that we're building with providers, or they can be a gift. And when assumptions, when they become a curse, I believe that it puts us in a relationship or in an autonomy to control that relationship. It puts us in a position to control that narrative. And it really shifts the power dynamics and puts us in this cycle of contempt. It sounds like this, and it comes up for me sometimes when I'm working with staff or when I'm working with the provider or I'm getting ready to make a phone call. I say things like, I'm sure that he is going to say this. I've already made an assumption. I can tell this year, this inspection is going to be this, because last year it was no good. Or it sounds like this. Obviously, they're not going to be in compliance. I've been on 2 complaints and 3 child abuse investigations. They call me all the time. They don't know the rules and regulations. Or I just have this feeling that today is not going to be a good inspection. They have a new director. They continuously have turnover. If you're anything like me, you've done that self-talk and you've made those assumptions. But we shouldn't stay there. I always say that it's wonderful when you are aware that you're making those assumptions and that's coming up for you. But what do you do to move that energy and that conversation that you may be having with a colleague, that you may be having with your supervisor, to positive intent? How can we assume positive intent? What do we believe about a provider? What do we believe about the centers or the communities that we're working with? Everyone deserves a licensing inspector that believes in them, that believes that they are doing the best that they can do. Our automatic tendency is to go into the negative. And like I said, how can we move from negative to the positive? But let's start with this cycle of contempt, because the reality is that we're human. We're human, and sometimes we get in this cycle of contempt. But staying here is super detrimental in building this relationship with our providers. So where does it start? Oops. It begins with an inbuilt disdain for anyone not as successful, clever, able, or hardworking as you think you are, or the other provider that you just left, or other communities that you're working with, or failure to consider what potential others might have. Or you fail to consider the value others bring to the table. So when you operate in this cycle of contempt, it doesn't breathe room for creativity on how to meet rules and regulations. It doesn't bring innovation. It doesn't breathe room for learning or even respect, a grounds of mutual respect and saying, I can accomplish strong licensing compliance, because you can't see them in a way that says they're meeting strong licensing compliance. This mutual contempt, it brings attitudes and judgments based on cynicism. It turns into being about you versus them and the children and families they serve. We begin to stereotype certain communities or certain provider types and create these assumptions. I tell my staff, one of the things that I had to work through as a licensing specialist, because I had never experienced storefront childcare settings. And as a licensing specialist, I began to notice that storefront childcare facilities were just set up differently. Sometimes they have unique layouts based on the storefront space. Sometimes their playground is across the street. It's not necessarily connected to the building, or it's in front of the building. What comes up for you when you're going to these facilities? And continue to ask yourself, do I treat certain provider types, locations, communities differently than others? If we don't ask ourselves those questions, we reinforce initial feelings of disdain. It creates a feedback loop of contempt. It impacts what we see, how we show up, how we hope for them. But how can we move forward? You get what you expect. Your expectations, what's in your mind, what assumptions you make, you get what you expect. You are creating those expectations. And it really generates a communication breakdown. When you expect negativity, you get negativity. So how can we change our language and our thoughts to say, this is going to be a great inspection this year? And perhaps you start off saying, last year wasn't a great year, but they have a new director, they have a new ownership, or I've been working with them all year answering questions. I expect positivity. You get what you expect when you look for it. I have staff who has hot buttons. You'll hear from Camille a little later. Her hot button is the infant room, safe sleep concerns, treating infants and toddlers poorly with language and interactions. If you look for it, you're going to expect it. She realizes that that is her hot button, and it comes up for her. And oftentimes when she was in the field, she would call and she'd say, they had so many concerns in that infant and toddler space, and I just have to talk this out. Leadership that's on the call today, do you create space for your staff's hot buttons? Because the reality is Sometimes we have hot buttons, right? And we look for them, but do you create space for your staff to talk through what's coming up for them? Maybe perhaps providing language, providing resources, how to navigate when it's a hot button issue. You see what you expect. And then you reinforce it. So you can only imagine if you have a provider that continuously gets complaints, that's continuously calling you, that continuously has turnover. Their reports of inspections have 15, 16 violations. You have a lot of information that's breathing through your mind. The relationship that you build with that provider, you can either reinforce it and create this loop, or get to a place where you say, okay, how can we move forward? Begin to ask questions, pause, and begin to listen and learn from your providers. Because there's a reason perhaps why we continue to stay in this space. What can you believe differently about that provider? I want to pause and think about who is a part of your team and who are we in relationship with as a licensing specialist. The leaders that are on the call, I always think about who am I in a relationship with in a leadership standpoint. Community members, families, stakeholders. As a contractor of the state, I'm in community with my state partner. Providers, teachers, owners, residents of the home, children. You're in relationship with colleagues. Can you think of others? Put them in the chat if you can think of others that are perhaps part of your team. Who are you in relationship with? Yes, cities, towns, families, mentors, local DSS. Yeah, the county workers, absolutely. CPS, yes, CPS, hospital, police, fire marshals, supervisor, community leaders, health inspectors, all of the above. Great, other states, we're in community together today. EMT, DCF, interpreters, wonderful coaches, regional officers, community colleges. Great therapists. We are constantly in relationship in our roles. And we have to think broadly about who is our team that helps our providers. We can either breed dysfunction, that cycle of contempt, or respect. So think about, how are we building trust with our team? Are you a trusted person with your team? Are you someone that people can go to get answers? Do people feel open enough to ask you questions? Do we jump to conclusions? Do we provide deep listening? Oftentimes, I recognize I'm not listening when I jump to conclusions. I'm already formulating what I'm going to say when I'm talking on the phone, or I'm at an inspection, or I'm in a community meeting. That breaks down trust when you either interject or don't provide deep listening. Or we fail to recognize the provider skills, like I mentioned. Do you see your provider and the value that they're offering in their home or their center? Or maybe some of you, like me, hold grudges. Are we dismantling the grudges that we have with some of the people from our team, like a colleague? How about conflict? Conflict is healthy, conflict is good, but how do we navigate conflict? How do we open the lines of communication and welcome opinions and other perspectives? Later on, you'll hear how at IRE, we work on the relationship outside of inspections while being mindful of the relationship that we're working on in the inspection. So it's a both and approach. We have to do both in and out of the inspection. And so oftentimes we cover a lot of conflict outside of the inspection, whether that be meeting with providers via phone or face-to-face in person. We host open forums monthly at different times of the day. And sometimes we have to address conflict during those meetings. And it's okay to navigate conflict, but it's how. You have to give space. You can't fear from it. How are you showing up in commitment? Are you losing vision for yourself as an inspector? Are you losing vision of why you are at your inspection to inspect? Do you get caught up sometimes on one thing, or maybe you got caught up on the previous inspection from the last year? How do we continue to say, I'm here to help you? I'm here so that children and you as the provider is safe. Yes, how can you be a resource? And then how do you increase confidence in your providers instead of breathing fear? It's very easy to walk in and say, I know there's a lot of rules and regulations, and I know you're a new provider, and I know this is a lot. You can either breathe life or death into the vision for that provider. Yes, someone said validate, absolutely. How can we establish strong licensing compliance with our team and who we're in relationship with while maintaining licensing compliance? Avoiding accountability, it just creates resentment. It gets you back into that loop of disdain. I don't trust you. I don't like you. I don't respect you. I don't value you. I don't see the possibilities of you. But how can you encourage hope and value that addresses moving your relationship to results? And that's strong licensing compliance. How can you increase growth? How can you increase achievement? Because the goal is no violations. The goal is a healthy, safe environment for children. The goal is to create trust with families that we are inspecting our providers and our centers in a way that says that communicates to families that it's inspected and I trust my child to be there. We're creating relationships with community members. How can we create a relationship that's built on growth and results, where they see you as an asset to their organization and to their team? It's easy to get distracted. Perhaps you had a situation where a licensed provider was going through a summary suspension, or their license was being revocated. We had to take it away. or perhaps they had to have multiple back-to-back inspections to maintain compliance. It's easy to get distracted and stay there. It's harder to say, I still see you, although we're in this space. How can we move forward? And maybe moving forward is no license at all. But how can you still create possibility for them in maybe other industries? Or validate what is possible for them next. So we must believe that everyone is worthy of respect. Everyone is worthy that we acknowledge their potential. Everyone is worthy of us seeing their abilities as useful. That they have meaning and purpose. And letting them give their best. And then fully recognize your provider's contributions. And that goes for your colleagues too. Your community members too. All of those people that you said that are part of your team help reinforce your relationships with your providers and who you are. And so opening those lines of communication when we're working in a cycle of respect. And by respecting people, you also acknowledge their human potential, the inbuilt ability that everyone has to grow, learn, and improve themselves given the opportunity. And by acknowledging this potential, we naturally come to consider how to allow providers to make the best use of whatever talents they have available and to develop more. So are we creating possibilities of growth, creativity, innovation? And then this approach, when you think about the cycle of respect, it creates a feeling of purpose and meaning for providers when they are in your presence. You'll begin to shift from, oh, the licensing specialist is here today, to a relationship that welcomes your presence and says, come on in. I love it when providers, they say, can I offer you a cup of coffee? Can I make you something to eat? That shows, although we can't accept it, that shows me that they see me as a member of their family, a member of their community. And one of the main reasons providers come to you and want to be around you is because you allow them to use their abilities and find meaning in life through growing as a person. So they, like I mentioned, they engage with you, they may call you more, they may email you more, and they show up. I can recall during one of my open forums, initial open forum, providers used to come and they would complain and talk about the way that it used to be. It used to be this way, and the last time I had an inspection, it was this, and it didn't go so well. And they were holding on to negative interactions and relationships that they had from the past. And it took time. We've been in our contract for at least 6 years. And every now and again, we go back to what happened in the past. But it takes my specialist and me as a leader to stop. And I'll say, I heard you. And sometimes they call me every year. What are your goals for moving forward? What is your hope with calling me today? You came to our meeting today to express your concerns, and I heard them. What do you hope to see in the future from your licensing team? And so opening that communication with our providers and our licensing team helped us to, one, accept them and meet them where they are. We empathize with you, we hear you. So now, how can we learn from you? You told us what you hope to see, and then we share with them, perhaps it's process, perhaps it's policy, maybe there's a standard of operating procedures, right? And so once we become transparent with sharing our policies and procedures, sometimes it helps them understand and helps us to move forward in this cycle of respect. And so over the years, it's been beautiful to see our open forums change from this cycle of disdain, this cycle of contempt, almost fearing conflict, to this healthy space of, Nikki, I have this resource that I want to share with other providers, or I have a question. I think others may have this question too. And it's become a place where it's a mutual ground of growth and information sharing and a safe space for really keeping children safe and in healthy environments. And so operating within this cycle of respect, it breeds acceptance without judgment. We operate with positive assumptions. We allow others to be their best, and we acknowledge our own assumptions and biases. And so I want to bring you back to IRE's foundation of respect. It's a reciprocal relationship between our team that we came up with and the relationship that they have with us of information sharing and respect. It's reciprocal. And like I mentioned before, we spend a lot of time talking about outside of the inspection. So we have communication outside of the state's communication that goes out monthly. Newsletters, websites, all of our staff have cell phones. We allow our providers to send text messages. We have internal policies of responding to emails in a timely manner. I mentioned our community open forum. We host it at different times of the day to reach different provider types. So one's in the middle of the day. We oftentimes have our centers and our school age programs and our residential camps. And then in the evening, we typically have our family childcare home providers. But alternating every month helps us meet the needs of our providers. We have a healing space, a space of solidarity, specifically for our directors, owners, and teachers of color. We host licensing one-on-one trainings. So really breaking down the rules and giving a highlight, and we do those quarterly for all of our license types. We provide licensing refresher trainings. We host individual trainings. It's not uncommon for a director to reach out to one of our specialists and say, hey, I'm new to the industry, or I'm new to this license type. Can we sit down and talk about this rule set? We work with our local early childhood councils to offer pre-licensing training. For new providers that are coming into the industry, we provide consultations or pre-licensing inspections. So providers are able to send their floor plans, or we can do a pre-inspection and go view their space prior to the inspection. We do provider surveys. And it's not abnormal for the leadership team to call after an inspection to ask, how did it go? In Colorado, in 2016, when the new rules and regulations rolled out in 2016, we also rolled out administrative guides. This administrative guide is powerful in communicating why a rule is a rule, and it also gives resources to each of the rules. We have family advocacy. We have somebody on our team that helps families understand reports of inspections. We have a lot of language, we have a lot of lingo in our reports of inspections. And so having someone on our team to talk to families, help strengthen that relationship with families. We encourage our providers to be a part of the rule revision making process, including families in the rule revision process. And then we really try to make our choices and policies and decisions on data. While we don't collect concrete numbers, we do collect stories. And so what are we observing? What are the patterns that we're observing? I challenge our staff to look at the patterns that they're observing with themselves, with their providers. And then the last thing that I want to share that we're doing is strength-based licensing, and we're doing this statewide. We started this year, and this strength-based licensing helps us to communicate what providers are doing well. And while this doesn't go on a report of inspection, we do give them a document that they can share with families. They can put it on their social media. They can post it next to their report of inspection, but it really changes the dynamic of that inspection to say, what are you doing well? And it forces us statewide to see providers' strengths versus always sitting in this space of what they're not doing well. Great. So Camille, I want you to hear from Camille. And she recently came out of the field as a licensing inspector for the last 8 years, I believe. And she's been with us since conception of culturally responsive community-based licensing. And I want her to spend some time talking about what has changed for her over time from when she initially came into licensing and working her caseload with her team to where she is now using our approach. I'll start with her and asking this question and hearing her thoughts. And then as you all are listening to her, if you have questions or comments or thoughts, please utilize the chat, and afterwards we'll continue to dialogue. But Camille.
Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome.
So, yes, it has been 8 years already. And when I first started, I have to say the role as a licensing specialist for myself was more of a regulatory style. It was very much of A through Z checklist, making sure that I'm completing specific items, specific things, almost like robotic, just to make sure everything got done, everything was up to our standard operating procedure. As time went on and I was able to go through all of Irie's trainings about being culturally responsive, knowing my hot spots, which I definitely had for the infant and toddler room, knowing my own personal biases, I was able to rethink and really reflect upon myself and my approach in my inspections. And I realized that I needed to create a more positive interaction with my providers, more of like a win-win situation, and really rethink and reflect upon myself on how can I achieve this with the knowledge that I have been trained in now. And so I self-reflected and I thought, well, in order for me to try to get to that common goal, I got to find a common goal, and that would be for myself and providers, the health and safety and well-being of children. That's why we do what we do. So I thought, okay, that's where I'm going to grow from. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to put myself out there and be a little bit vulnerable and allow my providers to know a little bit about myself and give them a little bit of background knowledge about me as a person. So Throughout the years, I have shared with my providers that, hey, I have been in your position. I have been a family child care provider. I have been the ECT. I have been the director. And now I'm in this role. So I understand where you're coming from. I have been there. I have come out of the field and I've just changed the role. But we do have this common goal of children. So once my providers understood where I came from, they were able to feel more relaxed with myself. And I was blessed when I came to IRE because I was able to work in the community of which I grew up in. And it was just by luck. And I was very thankful for that. So when I was able to share with the providers that I just had so much love for this community because this is the community I grew up in, and I know how I felt growing up, and I was able to explain and just show that passion I had for the area. They were able to understand where I was coming from, and that's where we were able to build our relationships in a whole different direction than I did the first year and a half when it was more of a regulatory situation. My inspections became more of a mutual inspection. So when I would come into the building, it was more of a welcoming situation as opposed to, like Nikki said, oh gosh, licensing is here. Negative approach. They weren't happy to see me. Where now it's more of an opportunity. Oh, we have a learning experience. If there are violations, we're going to learn from this. We're going to grow from this, and we're going to take this opportunity to move forward and get some different ideas, but being able to move forward. When I go in our inspections, I do take the time, and in each classroom, I take the director, the assistant director, anybody who would like to walk the inspection with us. I am more than willing to take everybody with us. But I do take time in each classroom to introduce myself to the staff members. If I do see violations in a classroom, I take the time to make sure that the staff members have a clear understanding of why it's a violation and come up with suggestions. If they don't know how they could correct it or do something differently, give suggestions. Well, and I bring it back to myself. When I was in the field, I can't actually tell you how to correct it, but I can tell you what I used to do or give you suggestions. I make sure to leave my business card in each room. And a lot of my facilities have my business cards posted in their classroom because I explain to the staff and the directors, assistant directors, anybody that's with us, that I would rather have a proactive approach with licensing than a reactive approach. So if you have a question about something in that license, in your license space, you're just not quite sure, shoot me a text, give me a phone call, shoot me an email. I will answer it as soon as possible. I would rather you come and have a conversation with me about what the intent is, what rule we're kind of teeter-tottering on, and making sure that you're still in compliance, but you're still doing what's best for the children. So making sure to have that communication within the director, the staff members, and knowing that I'm available. It helps so that they will reach out. And it isn't just the directors, it is the staff members. So when they have concerns, they know how to reach me also. And by developing these relationships, it has really changed the tone of inspections. It has changed the relationships within myself and my providers. It's made a huge difference amongst the community, and it's a more welcoming inspection as opposed to a negative feeling when we walk into a facility or a home. And same with homes. Homes, like Nikki has said, we're coming into their personal space. This is their home. This is where they live. They are working where they live, to be respectful of their environment. And although we have specific, rules that they need to abide by, working with them, thinking things through, and having conversations so that there is a clear understanding. Definitely being available for them. Our home providers sometimes can feel isolated and not have that interaction with other adults throughout the day. And when they need something, they may need it right then and there. So trying to be responsive as quickly as we can for them, but to definitely sit back and listen to what our providers need and not be so quick to go towards a negative response, but come from a positive mindset of saying, what can we do? What can we do? And then just thanking everybody for, doing what they do. Thanking everybody before I leave to say, thank you for supporting our children and keeping them safe and happy. And I think that is where we can grow from.
Thank you so much, Camille and Nikki and Mary Beth. This has just been so fabulous, and I'm just really overwhelmed with all the positive comments, because it is just indicative that licensing has moved, right? Like we're really moving, at least from where I started 25 years ago. And all your comments show that, you guys are really aware of a lot of this and are practicing that. So just a couple of, we're going to move on since we're at time. We have a closing poll, but I will let you know that in our follow-up email that's coming out, you'll be invited to two. We have an upcoming professional development session, which will be in September, and it's going to be on the different theories of monitoring. And Dr. Rick Feeney, he's a retired professor and kind of a pioneer in licensing monitoring. He'll be the presenter on that call. And then the next slide, we're having an upcoming COP opportunity, which talks really about what makes a successful licensor. And some of the content today also speaks to that, but we're going to go into a little bit more about key competencies, soft skills, technical skills, all of those sorts of things. But we do have a closing poll that we would like for you, if you have time, to just take a few minutes to fill out. We use this to guide us in our CQI process to make sure that the content that we are presenting is relevant and useful to you all. I was just going to resonate a few little things that really hit home for me today, and that is none of us individually can fix the whole system by ourselves, but individually we can do things in our everyday work to influence that. The other thing that I think about often, I so appreciate Nikki talking about the own self-talk that we have within our heads. It's so true. I remember one time in probably about 2010, I was sent to a child care center that I had never been to before. We were covering vacancies. And the minute I pulled into the driveway, I thought, this is just going to be terrible, right? It was a judgment based on the aesthetic look of the facility. Well, I walked into that facility and it was honestly the best interaction between staff and children and nurturing that I've ever seen. So just a personal kind of thing about assumptions. The other thing that I would like to challenge you all to think about, and I am not always good at this every day myself, but when I wake up and I look in the mirror and I'm going through my morning routine, I'm never looking at myself thinking, I'm not going to have good intentions today, right? I don't think I'm going to get up and go to work and do something horrific or bad or terrible. And I think that if we believe that about ourselves, then we have to extend grace to other people that they're likely starting from the same place. And so I would just like to offer that to you all. And then Mary Beth and Camille and Nikki, thank you so much for such a wonderful, powerful session today. greatly appreciated. Any closing thoughts from the two of you real quick?
No, thank you. I saw in the comments there was a lot of interest in our strength-based licensing tool. So I'll share that in the resources that will
Great.
come out for certificates. But thank you so much for this opportunity. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Nikki. Mary Beth?
Just thank you all so much.
Thank you.